Happy Friday, Bethany and friends. Today I'd like to read to you from one of my favorite books, Genesis. I just love the story of the family in Genesis because, they really have problems. They're they have bad family relations and fights between brothers, and it's just awful. But God is still with them. God is still loving them. But I want to look at a story about an ending. It's the end of Jacob's life, of Israel's life. Starts at Genesis 49:33. When Jacob ended his charge to his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed, breathed his last, and was gathered to his people. Then Joseph threw himself on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. Joseph commanded the physicians in his service to embalm his father. So the physicians embalmed Israel. They spent 40 days doing this, for that is the time required for embalming. And the Egyptians wept for him for 70 days. Many of you know back in May, my father died. And it is such an unusual time to have a loved one die. He was a man of great popularity, even though he was 91. He turned 91. Even though he was 91, he was very popular. He was the head of the railroad in the town of Boone when he retired. And then he was mayor for 14 years or so. And all these people wanted to go to his funeral. But even one of my siblings, my oldest sister, couldn't make it because of COVID. Because she's in Chicago and it's a hot spot, and her husband is health insecure. And so my brother, one sister, my wife, and my children, social distancing, had my father's funeral. And then a few other family members from my wife's family who treated my father as their father came to the graveside service. It wasn't the fanfare that we thought we would get. And I'm telling you this because mourning was difficult. Mourning is difficult. We have these rules in our society that says, "Oh, buck up, don't be strong." But that's not strong. Not showing the emotions that God gave you is not strong. Julius Caesar, when one of his friends died on the battlefield, was weeping over him, legend has. And one of his generals came up to him and said, "Don't do that, it's a sign of weakness." And Julius Caesar looked at his general and said, "No, it's a sign of weakness when one cannot weep at the death of a friend." And mourning comes and goes. You don't get it all over with like here it said 70 days. I mean, that to us, that seems like a long time, but in reality, I knew my dad for 59 years. I don't get over that in 70 days. I once had a wife, a widow, come to me and said, Herbert, not the real name, Herbert died 2 years ago, and I still find myself out of nowhere crying over him. I looked at her and said, "How long were you and Herbert married?" She goes, 62 years. Well, you've only been without him for 2 years. 62 years is a long time to live and then to be without. We need to be gentler on each other when it comes to mourning. Because it comes and goes. You're fine and all, suddenly you smell a smell or you see a sight, or for me, I hear a train whistle in the middle of the night and it comes back to me. Just Monday, I went alone to my parents' house, and I spent the day going through my dad's office, all of his awards, his personnel file from the railroad going all the way back to 1947 when he was a 17-year-old kid, all the way up until he retired. All of that was there. All the clubs and organizations that he helped run, Pufferbilly Days that he helped build up to a great festival between him, my mom, and many others. His time as mayor, his time in Rotary, and all the other clubs he was part of, his participation in his church, all of that was there. And with that were the memories he kept, the papers he kept of his father, and his mother, his father-in-law and mother-in-law, his brother. All that was in the office, and I felt like I was going through the tomes of the ancient, going through these great documents of another time. And I felt connected to my father again, and I felt great joy and great sadness. And I sat there at his desk and I wept. He died in May, and I'm weeping in August. It comes and goes. Mourning sometimes might be a lifelong event. My sister had her son die when he was 9 years old, 20 years ago or so. I still know that every day they hit his birthday and they hit the day he died, it comes back to them. And that's okay. As long as we are able to carry on our life. There are unhealthy ways to mourn, but stopping mourning just because time has passed doesn't honor the person or yourself. I know for the rest of my life when I hear a train in the evening as the sun is set, I will think of him. With joy and sadness. And that's okay. Because when we're so close to someone, they are part of us. And when they're gone, they take a piece of us. But we keep them alive when we share their memories with one another. Share the joys, the disappointments, the love. So Joseph laid at his father's head and wept. What a strong man Joseph was.